Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is my story, Criminal Court Update Edition. This past weekend, I flew home to Chicago to attend the criminal pretrial hearing in person. As you know, those of you who have been following my story or seen my story in the news or on social media, my abuser has been charged with 3 felonies for the abuse, torture, and death of my dog, Kirby. Now, the story behind all of that is a long one, and I will be touching on that throughout this podcast. But I fought for this. I have fought so hard to see criminal charges brought against him for what he did to me, to my dogs. And now that it's here and it's happening, he is going through court for these criminal felony charges, 3 of them. And I haven't been attending any of them because I don't live in the area anymore. And honestly, there hasn't been much that has been happening yet at these pretrial hearing dates. But I knew there was one coming up this past weekend, and I am a teacher, and we are on Thanksgiving break this week. And I had the opportunity to go home, and I knew that I wanted to go home. I knew that I wanted to be there and see him in person, in court, being held criminally responsible for what he did. That was really important to me. And so about a month ago or so, I bought the plane ticket back home, and I flew into Chicago. I left my city, my home, at like 4:30 in the morning, and I flew out to Chicago, got into Chicago around 10:30 in the morning, and spent a very lovely weekend with my parents. And I really wasn't anticipating them coming with me to court. They're playing in the background. Rosie. Win. I really wasn't anticipating my parents coming to court with me because there's been, it's been a lot for my family, and it's been hard, and I didn't anticipate them going, and I planned on just showing up to court myself, but then my mom told me that she wanted to be there with me at court, and I was very appreciative of that. And then my dad told me that he had taken the day off of work on Monday so that he could be there with me as well. And I was very, very appreciative and thankful for them and their support. And so this past Monday, November 21st, we woke up really early and got ready and headed out at around 7:15 to the courthouse, which is down in Joliet, Illinois, because the criminal charges are being pressed by Will County, Illinois. And so we got to the courthouse a little bit early. It didn't open until 8:30, and so we were standing in line waiting for security to let us in and everything until they let us in right at 8:30. Now, leading up to this, I knew I wanted to be there in person to see him. And I also had the realization that I hadn't seen him in person for 2.5 years. The last time I saw him in person was the day I was giving my statement to the Arlington Heights Police Department. And I stepped out of the interview room to use the restroom around noon that day. And I stepped into the hallway, and he was standing right there. And the police quickly arrested him for violating my order of protection. But that was the last time I've seen him in person. Now, I've seen him, or heard his voice, I should say, for the civil case. He never once turned his camera on for the lawsuit, but he did attend with his voice, I guess. And back 2 years ago in October of 2020, when he pleaded guilty to violating my order protection, he did have his camera on. And so I saw him then. But other than that, I haven't seen him in 2.5 years. And you know that I was receiving harassing messages about 2 months ago about at this point, which we believe to be him and or someone he knows. According to the courts, they believe that it was him or someone he knows because it was enough to get my order protection extended for 2 more years. But I hadn't seen him in person. And so this past Monday was going to be the first time that I saw him in person. And as a victim, as a survivor, that's a lot. Seeing your abuser, being in their presence, it can be a lot. And so I really wasn't sure what was going to happen, how I was going to feel, how I was going to respond, or really what he was going to do. And so that was kind of the feeling going into court on Monday morning. And so 8:30 comes, they let us into the courthouse, and my parents and I head up to the 5th floor of the building where court will be held. And mind you, we got there an hour early. And so the way it worked on the 5th floor of this courthouse was there was a main hallway which had the elevators. And then you leave that hallway and then it's like a T, right? And if you go left, there's maybe 4 doors, and that was where our courtroom was going to be. And then there was a little cafe, just right next to the courtroom, basically. And so we stopped there, and my dad got a cup of coffee for the morning, and they had tables in the cafe, and so I had us sit at the table that was like right next to the hallway. And it was open door and everything. So it's just right there. And so I could see everything. And I just had like this knowing, like, this is what I'm going to do. So I pulled up the chair and I turned it. So I was facing the hallway. And I kind of leaned back and I crossed my legs and I was just positioned so that I was facing the hallway and like you couldn't miss me. Like if you turn down the hallway, like I'm the first thing you're going to see. And I felt so powerful and so confident sitting like that. Like, yeah, I'm here. Know my presence. Know that I am here. I made this happen. I am the reason that you are here today because I didn't give up and I have fought for this. And I just felt that surge of knowing and confidence as I was sitting there in that chair. And my dad later said, he had stopped at the restroom, and when he came back, he saw me sitting there and he was just like, wow, like that is a woman of confidence. That is someone you don't want to mess with. And like as a survivor, like, woof, that's incredible. And so, we were sitting there and my mom was sitting in the chair kind of in the corner and my dad was sitting across from me. And then at 8:50, Matt showed up and I saw him, and that was the first time I have seen him in 2.5 years. Rosie, overplaying. Uh-oh. What is that nonsense? We're going to pause for a moment. Whimsy, come here. Come here. Let's see if I can get them. Okay. So 8:50. Hey! Mama wants to do her podcast, bubbies. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we're sitting there in the cafe, and mind you, I was wearing my KD necklace for Kirby and Daisy, which my sister had gotten for me last Christmas, and I wear it as like a protection and just to feel that connection to them and the purpose. And it's just, very meaningful. It's a very powerful symbol. And so anytime I have anything to do with my story, with this situation, I put on my KD necklace. And so I was wearing it, and, you kind of play with it a little bit and, touch it for reassurance. And so I was, I had my KD necklace on. So we're sitting there in the cafe. I'm sitting there just feeling so powerful, right? And just so confident. And I, at 8:50, I see him. And he gets there, and he's there. And this is the first time I am seeing him in 2.5 years. First time seeing him in person. And I didn't have a reaction at all. It was just like, oh, he's here. Which, as a survivor, knowing that that person did this, the horrible things that I experienced, that I watched, that I witnessed, seeing him in person and just having oh, he's here. And then just looking at him and watching him and knowing that I'm not afraid to look away. I'm not going to cower. I'm not afraid of him. And his presence is so powerful. Ugh. So he's there, and he's wearing a suit, but an open jacket, no tie, a gray kind of outfit, I guess. And I noticed that man has aged a lot. He looks like he's aged 15 years in the 2.5 years since I've seen him. He's got a lot of gray hair now. And he looks old. Life hasn't been great for him, which, right. And I told my parents, I was like, he's here. And they were like, oh, right. And it's fine. Because we were just And so then, he's there, and he's standing by the window, and he's hanging out there. And then he goes to check the courtroom and comes back out. Which no, obviously no one was there, but okay. So then I just sit there, and I'm in, my power stance, and he didn't look at me once. I didn't see him once look at me. We didn't make eye contact. And I'm going to pause because the doggies are going to play. Rosie, Wim. Are you going to play? Wimsy, go play? I'll just out, shall we? Go, just go. Okay, not that one. He's humping. That's not, come here. Come here. I'm gonna expose you. That's so naughty. That's so naughty. I'm so sorry. It's okay. But that's your sister. Ew. Okay, can Mama do her podcast now? Thanks. Okay. So he's just standing there by the window, checking his phone and, not looking at me once. But he knows I'm there. He would have seen me as he came off the elevator, but he didn't look at my face. He didn't make eye contact with me. And, he's pacing a little bit, checking his phone. He's on his phone the whole time. And I feel his energy, and the energy feels nervous. He feels nervous, scared. And it's good. Good, finally. He should be nervous. And I just had this moment, and I just felt this surge of knowing and power that he is here in this courtroom right now, in this courthouse, waiting to attend his pretrial hearing because I did this. I brought him here. I flew out to Chicago for one single day. I went to the police department. I filed that report. I called the prosecutor. I gave him a heads up. I told him, about my story. And then we got this going. And he pressed charges. And now Matt is being held criminally responsible. And I just had that knowing. I'm here. You're here. Because I brought you here. And that was just the surge of knowing and power. And so, oh, that was just a really great place to be at, as a survivor, seeing her abuser in person, right? So at 9:20, people are starting to filter in a little bit to the hallway, and we're waiting for court to start. And then at 9:20 or so, I see the prosecutor who I've been in touch with, who's really running the case, enters the courtroom. And a few minutes after that, Matt goes in after him. And around 9:25 or so, I tell my parents, okay, let's go in, And so it's like, all right, like, this is it. Here we go, And so we go into the courtroom, and I lead the way. And, we open the door, and there's, first of all, you take it in, and it's like, oh, like, this is what a courtroom looks like in person, because you see everything on TV, and you're like, where do we go? What side do we sit on, Rosie. Hey, Rosie June. Oh! I'm going to pause again because they're playing. They're just playing. Joseph. Joji. How's that? Oh, hi, Playbaby. So we go into the courtroom, and, we have to go through like two, like, kind of double doors. And you enter the courtroom, and at first it's like, I'm taking it all in. Like, oh, this is the courtroom. Like, what does this look like? Because, you see courtrooms on TV, and everyone is different. So you're kind of like, well, like, where do I go? Like, where do I sit, And I see Matt is sitting right there, on the bench, like right when you come in the door. There's like the benches for the public to sit in, and he's sitting in the one on the left side, like right next to the door. So I'm like, all right, well, we're not going in there, obviously. And so I guided my parents to the other side, the right side of the aisle, and I had to sit in a bench a couple rows up in front of Matt. And he for sure saw me come in, obviously. And that just, like, in itself, like, felt like so much power. It's like, he knows I'm here, Okay, why are you guys playing right now? Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Why are you playing? Because you're having fun. Any hoodles? Any hoodles? So my parents and I take the seat, take our seats. And we're sitting there waiting for court to start. I just wait for them to be done. I think so. I wish you could see. They're so cute right now. Not that. Excuse me. Thank you. All right. So my parents and I take our seats on the right side of the benches, Uh-oh. What? What's you barking at? What you barking at, Bubby? Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3. Heart. Outside. Daddy. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I lied. All right. Let's try this again. So my parents and I take our seats, on the right side of the courtroom and the bench, and the benches are starting to fill up, as the public arrives for their cases or, to hear, support their families or whatever. And I see Jonathan is sitting at the table with another attorney, and they're talking things over. And people are filing in, and then at 9:30, and then at 9:30, the bailiff, enters and says, "All rise," the Honorable Judge, blah, blah, is now presiding, that whole thing. And so the judge takes her seat and court begins, and, a couple cases go first, and, we're just hanging out there. And then she calls, Barry, Barry versus the people of the state of Illinois. And he goes up, and his attorney is there, and his attorney is at the stand, and he has a public defender, and his attorney, shaggier hair, beard, had a few cases after this one, goes up there and asks for continuance for motions. And they say, yes, okay, January 18th. And then that's it. And then Matt leaves, and his attorney says, go wait outside. I'll go meet you out there. And then they call the next case. And it was all of like a minute. And my parents and I were like, okay, And my parents and I were like, okay, it was like literally all of a minute. And I had that understanding when I flew home that this wasn't really going to be anything, that it wasn't going to be much, right? And so we sat there for another 30 minutes or so, listening to other court hearings, proceedings, all of that. And then about at 9:45 or so, the judge... At 9:45 or so, the judge took a recess, and at that point, the victim's advocate, who I have been in contact with, came over and introduced herself and said the prosecutor will be back in a little bit and will meet with us. He had to, do something downstairs, and then he will be right back. And so, we sat for probably 30 minutes in total, listening to other court hearings, and then the judge, called us. Or I'm sorry, the judge didn't call us out. And then the prosecutor called us and said, we can go meet outside. And he found us the room for us to meet in right next to the courtroom. And so it was him, it was the prosecutor, the victim advocate, me, and my parents. And my parents and I sat at the table, and the prosecutor and victim advocate were standing and talking to us. And I had contacted them beforehand and said, hey, we're going to be here in person just to meet you and put a face to the name kind of thing. And so the prosecutor was explaining kind of what happened today and said, this is going to be continued until January 18th because the defense attorney just got all of discovery, which is all of the evidence, and he said, it's like your statement, it's the medical reports, it's the police reports, and he needs some time to go through that. Before, we can proceed with anything. And so he said, the defense attorney does have about 200 cases. And so, he'll need some time to go through this. He was like, just like it took me some time to go through everything. And he said, come January 18th, he was like, you can attend in person. You absolutely don't have to. And I was like, I get it. I was like, I probably won't because, I said, I'm just here on Thanksgiving break, and it worked out that I could come home right now and just meet you. And he was like, yeah, of course. And so come January 18th, the defense attorney could say something like, hey, I need more time, to go through this, which fine. Or beforehand, and the prosecutor said, we'll, and I'm just having a moment right now, just talking about this realization that I'm talking about the prosecutor, and that's going to make me emotional. Oh, just having that moment of realization right now. Sorry, you're catching this live. But the prosecutor said, excuse me. But the prosecutor said, before January 18th, the defense attorney could come to him and say, hey, look, my guy wants to plead guilty. And at that point, the prosecutor would offer a plea deal and say, here's what I have to offer. And the defense could say, yes, we accept, or no, we still want to plead guilty, but we're going to have the judge sentence him. So those are two possibilities. Or the defense attorney could see everything and say, you know what, we're going to contest this. It's going to go to trial. And then at that point, the prosecutor said he would be very much in touch with me, planning, preparing for all of that. And he said this could go on for a while, as we know. But those are kind of the next steps. And, just asking if we had any questions. And, the other thing that the prosecutor said is that, when it comes to sentencing, they could try to get me to make a victim impact statement. The other thing the prosecutor said is, when it comes to sentencing, they could try to get me to make a victim impact statement. And he said, now, that would be up to the judge's discretion, because he said, you're not going to like this, but this case is essentially of Kirby, my dog, being your property, and this is a case about him. And he said, in the sense of this isn't a case of like a human murder, battery, assault, like that kind of thing, where like you would be entitled more so to a victim impact statement. So he said it would really be up to the judge's discretion, which I totally understand. Ellie. Which I totally understand. And my mom was even saying, it makes sense that they didn't call me right away when the charges were filed. Because this isn't like my case as much as it is, and it's my story 100%. The criminal case is Matthew Berry abused and tortured and killed my dog Kirby. That's like the criminal case. The second layer to that is he was abusing me. I was his victim, and all of this, right? Which is why, the prosecutor, I believe, he gets it, and would like for me to have the opportunity. And so that puts things into perspective, and, I'm wondering, what that means for the case, and hopefully, it's better, I guess. And, it's true. I mean, that's what it is, that, Matt killed my dogs, and this case is criminally about what he did to Kirby that day. And so, it's just very nice to meet the prosecutor and defense attorney, the prosecutor and the victim advocate in person, and just say, hey, this is who I am. It's nice to meet you. And that's kind of where things stand right now. And so, it was nice. I was able to have lunch with my parents afterwards, and then I flew home that night. And that's where things stand. And so that's our court update. But it is so empowering to be going through this, to be there in person. And the prosecutor saw that I made this great effort to fly in to be there for like all of a minute of court, right? My parents were there. Matt saw it. He saw that I flew in and I was there. I was there at court and seeing him be held accountable for this. And that's everything. Yeah. And so I am a survivor of domestic abuse. My abuser killed both of my dogs. I have fought so hard for justice. And on Monday, I saw my abuser in court in person. And I felt on top of the world, so empowered, so powerful, so confident. And as a survivor, seeing her abuser and feeling powerful, that is everything. So that's our court update for now. As always, I will update you on everything I know along the way. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your love and support. Thank you for caring. And I will catch you on the next episode. Thank you.